Criminal justice come to order, and Uncle go clerk, why don't you call the roll so we know we got a quorum here. Take a deep breath.
Yes, sir. Whitmer,
Present.
Flores,
Present.
Hinojosa,
Present.
Betancourt,
Present. It's a 4P.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, sir. Miles, King.
Yeah, we got a quorum. I can count. Quorum's present. A matter of personal privilege, and y'all probably don't have any idea why I'm doing this, but yesterday I kicked out my collective bargaining for Houston firefighters. It was kind of expedited by the local government committee, and when I was thanking people on the floor, including the lieutenant governor and the members, I left out that the chairman of that committee, Betancourt, said it early in the session and helped me move it through. So I didn't recognize you yesterday when it mattered. I hope today this makes up for you, because he reminded me on the, can I go ahead and tell him, you remind me on the floor I didn't recognize the chair of the committee, so
Thanks. Thanks, Jane.
thank you, Paul. I got to go back to Houston with him. Yeah, yeah, and Chairman of Finance, thank you. Okay, we have a busy agenda. Let's rock and roll. Senator Zaffarine, we left SB 49 pending last session. No, last week. You want to leave it pending today? You recognize Senate Bill 49.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, Senate Bill 49 relates to crime victims' compensation. The program helps violent crime victims and immediate families of injured or deceased victims with financial costs of crime. Under current law, the Attorney General may pay for relocation expenses for victims who need to relocate after experiencing family violence, sexual assault that occurred at the victim's residence, stalking, human trafficking, or child victims of attempted murder in the child's residence. There are other serious crimes in which relocation of a victim might be necessary, including armed robbery and kidnapping. What's more, the current definition of an immediate family member eligible for CVC benefits extends only to a parent, child, brother, sister, grandparent, or grandchild. Some victims may have only relatives, such as aunts or cousins, who do not fall into those categories, but still need bereavement or relocation assistance. Another issue with CVC is that the Attorney General can allocate only $2,000 for moving expenses, plus $1,800 to cover rent, but these amounts have not increased since the statute was passed in 1979 and are insufficient for most Texas cities, especially Austin. Lastly, loss of earnings compensation due to bereavement leave taken due to a victim's death is limited to the lesser of 1,000 or 10 days, which also is less than many persons need to maintain financial stability in the violent death of a loved one. Senate Bill 49 would provide greater support to victims of crime and help to alleviate some of the emotional and financial burdens that may face. Mr. Chairman, we've heard some concerns from two members of this committee, so while I'd like to say what the committee does, we'd like to leave it pending so we can work out a committee substitute, make sure that the funding is sustainable, and make sure that the definition is clear. But generally, the bill would be consistent with a limitation of 2 payments per victim, but expand eligibility to apply for relocation and rental expenses to an injured crime victim or a family member or household member of a member of that household. So
Very good.
suppose that the person lives only with a cousin. Well, that cousin would be eligible. If it's a boyfriend,
Thank
that
you,
boyfriend would be
Senator Zaffarine.
eligible. But it would also change the current ceiling that I mentioned in my introduction to caps. So we'll work on that committee substitute.
Very good. Any questions?
I have a couple.
Senator Huffman.
Yeah, Senator Zaffarine, I know you're working on a sub. I just want to, state that I have really big concerns. We all know how many crime victims there are, and certainly no one would advocate for them more than you or this committee and myself and others in this room. But we don't want to create something that's so large that it's dispersed to so few that it really doesn't help anyone. So
I agree.
Unfortunately, we have to be selective. And we have, over the last few bienniums, that GRD account that funds that has lost revenue steadily because of court costs going down for a lot of different reasons, but COVID included. But it's starting to go up. But we are putting significant GRD funds and other funds into the crime victims funds, $109 million in GRD for 24-25, and another $182 million, which is almost $8 million over previous biennium. So it's a lot of money. We just want to make sure that we can keep up
I agree,
whatever
that's why
you
we're
said.
working on a
So
committee
we'll work with you
substitute.
on that, and, yeah.
And thank
We'll
you
talk
for, Thank you
offline.
for letting us know in advance. You and Senator Flores also had some concerns, so we'll work with you.
Of course, always.
Very,
Thank you.
very good. Tara Tucker. And today with the agenda we have, we're going to restrict people to 2 minutes on your testimony, subject to the discretion of the chair. Tara, you get 2 minutes sharp. State your name, who you represent.
Good morning. My name is Tara Tucker. I'm the Texas State Director for Alliance for Safety and Justice. We work with crime survivors from across the state through our program, Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. And there's over 14,000 members of that association. And we have a few members here that would like to testify today too. And I'm submitting written testimony from a survivor who couldn't make it. Senator Zaffarini did an excellent job explaining what this bill does. We know that there are lots of survivors of violent crime that are not receiving benefits. And while our crime victims compensation is a good one, we think these changes would make it stronger and enable it to assist more survivors, because we know when survivors aren't getting help for their victimization, for their trauma, that's very destabilizing for them, their families, their communities. It leads to repeat victimization and can also lead to other engagement in crime. So we want to make sure that we are assisting as many people as possible. This bill does 3 things, mainly that she said it adjusts some definitions so that household member is expanded to be people who live with the individual, not just family members. And then it expands the family member definition so that, like she said, close uncles, aunts, people who might be the only family someone has can also apply for those benefits. We know that the cost of living has risen over those years, and so we are turning the caps for relocation, bereavement, and into minimums and leaving room for the department to adjust. We are working on a substitute to tighten up those things and kind of limit a little bit in a responsible way who can apply for those benefits, making sure that there's a safety element for the relocation, and making sure that the family member is, directly
Okay.
close. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't think so. Thank you. You're going to have to use this clock, or I'm going to have to. Jim Henderson? Gotta wait till they're there, man. Senator Miles showing present, Senator Huffman present. Yes, sir. Just want to be shown present. Jim Henderson, please. Jill, I'm sorry. State your name and who you represent.
I'm Jill Henderson, and I also am representing Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice, as well as myself. I am here in support of the bill SB 49 as well, and just want to state, well, first of all, thank you all for hearing us today. I don't know if you've had a close relative that you've lost to violence, or if you've had a child taken too soon by violence. But I can tell you that going through this type of painful experience is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy or on any of you. It's also an added painful experience that victims have to complete the victim's compensation application. Just filing the application within itself is a process that is very complex for us because we're already traumatized, and it's a heavy burden for victims. Passing SB 49 will give families like mine additional relief by lifting some of the burdens. I never imagined that I would actually have to testify to in the Capitol as a crime survivor. In fact, I envisioned one day watching my son, Bakari Henderson, legislate for Texans here in the Capitol, since Bakari interned for the Texas Senate and the Speaker of the House and was considered one of your own. SB 49 is necessary to help loved ones who are traumatized. When my son Bakari was murdered in Greece, we needed extended time off to not only process our grief, but also to plan funeral arrangements, hire legal counsel, and then travel back and forth to trial proceedings. This is not only a tremendous mental and physical and financial burden on my immediate family, but it causes the same burdens on me and my husband's siblings and our extended family members who also take off work and travel with us to trial proceedings as we continue to fight for justice for Bakari. Unfortunately, they currently are not eligible for victims' compensation, so passing this bill would allow family members who also have been traumatized to get more support.
Thank you. Did you have additional comments? Don't pay attention to that clock. I'll give you more time if you need it.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just a few more things. In addition to waiting months and months for reimbursement for victims' compensation, we also feel that it's egregious that we only receive $1,000 or 2 weeks of lost wages when we take off to grieve. This throws salt in our already painful wounds. You barely have time to bury your loved one in 2 weeks, let alone process and then grieve your loss. I don't expect you all to fully understand what we go through when we carry this type of pain and trauma, but I am urging you to pass SB 49 to help victims who deserve to have more time to grieve without worrying about paying our bills. As a victim, I can tell you firsthand that we depend on victims' compensation to help provide the support needed to deal with the worst situation in our lives. As legislators, you cannot bring our loved ones back, but you can pass SB 49 to expand victims' compensation to give us additional support we need. Thank you
Very
for your
good.
time.
Thank you, ma'am. We're sorry about your experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clarence Watson. State your name and who you represent, Mr. Watson. You've got 2 minutes, please, sir.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. My name is Clarence Watson, and I'm the co-chapter coordinator for Crime Survivor Safety and Justice. And I'm here today to speak in favor of Senate Bill 49. This bill is all about safety. We all want to feel safe physically and mentally. For 5.5 years, I worked in an organization mentoring youth. The biggest issue I've seen with young people is going through traumatization in their home, traumatization in their home. These services have left families wanting more, victimized, and feeling less than. It would give us stable housing, and if I had had these services at the time of me and my family's victimization, we wouldn't have had to move around to make sure that our abuser didn't find us. Staying in a home can quickly become unsafe for people who have experienced violent crimes, exposing survivors and their families to violence, more violence, and compound trauma. But here in Texas, if a survivor of crime, like if a survivor survives an incident like a home invasion or loss of a loved one to homicide, they're not eligible for assistance for relocation, not even temporarily. More has to be done to give parents a peace of mind to know going to work that their kids are safe at their school and at home, and giving children the ability to focus on their education and not worrying about if their abuser is going to come back when their parent, their mom, is at home by herself. If you don't think this bill affects you personally, you're wrong. It affects our whole community. It's like a wound that's not properly healed and caught early. It becomes infected. Over time, it becomes larger and deeper. It involves muscles and ligaments and can cause extensive bone damage. Now, I would like for you to look at this as a mental wound, or PTSD.
Okay.
These images need to be. Imagine someone dealing with these for over 10 years. Now they're taking all their frustrations out on the community because we know hurt people hurt people. This is basically, for some it might not matter, but for most, this is a matter of life and death. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson, for being here. John Chancellor with Texas Police Chief Association in support does not wish to testify. Kristen Huff with Austin as a resource witness and neutral. Office of Attorney General, I guess, what it says. Nadia Islam, City of Santone, is in support and does not wish to testify. One more word. Amanda Aubrey Texas Council on Family Violence is in support and is providing us written testimony only. Anyone else present would like to testify for or against Senate Bill 49? If not, public testimony is closed, and we'll leave it pending at the request of the author. Now we'll hear Senate Bill 385 by Senator Hall. Well, just a second. No, Bob, I'm sorry. Zafirini has one more, and I don't want to get on her dark side today.
Zafirini always has one more.
But
Sorry,
wait,
Bob.
there's more.
Wait, there's more.
Yeah, Senator Zafirini on 1717, and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
forward.
Mr. Chairman and members, Senate Bill 1717 relates to the prosecution of stalking. Texas Council on Family Violence reports that approximately 80% of stalking victims know their perpetrators. What's more, approximately 85% of female victims of attempted intimate partner homicide by male partners had been stalked in the year prior to the attack, and 76% of women murdered by an intimate partner had been stalked in the year prior. Currently, the stalking statute lacks clarity in cases in which the stalker is a current or former intimate partner with a history of domestic abuse. Even the most mundane actions, such as dropping off groceries at the victim's home, can indicate a direct threat intended to scare the victim. Senate Bill 1717 would update current law to allow for more effective application of the Texas stalking statute. Generally, it would clarify that when considering whether a stalker's actions would cause a reasonable person's fear, reasonable means reasonable under the same circumstances as the victim, in other words, the reasonable person standard. It would allow prosecutors to present evidence of a prior violent behavior in cases in which the accused stalker has a history of domestic violence against the victim, expand the scope of a stalking offense to mean a person inducing fear of a crime committed against not only the victim, but also a member of the victim's family or household, or a person with whom the victim has a dating relationship, and include making a victim feel terrified or intimidated in the criminal element of stalking relating to the feelings induced in the victim. We do have a resource witness.
Amanda Aubrey.
These are all oral testimony for 1717.
Tabitha Harrison. Who do you want to call? Do you have someone you prefer?
Tabitha Harrison.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I thought. Ms. Harrison, will you state your name and who you represent, please?
My name is Tabitha Harrison, Domestic Violence High-Risk Team Coordinator with the Texas Council on Family Violence, and I'm here in support of SB 1717. May I begin?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know why the buzzer didn't go.
We're grateful to Senator Zafirini, the bill author, and this committee for the opportunity to speak on the need for this bill. I am a former law enforcement officer, a former special investigator with the Department of Family and
Glad you
Protective
made it.
Services, and a veteran of the global war on terror. With that comes many years of specialized training in family violence and a very clear understanding about the weaponization of fear. The perspective on what is still needed to improve the important work of the justice system and protecting victims and holding criminals accountable. In 80% of domestic violence homicides or attempted homicides, the victim has identified stalking behaviors just prior, so within the 12 months of the homicide or attempted homicide. Additionally, stalking reports are the single most common use of the criminal justice system prior to attempted or completed intimate partner homicide. Law enforcement lacks the tools to interrupt the dangerous trajectory from stalking to homicide because the current statute fails to capture key behaviors and reactions associated with stalking. Further, the current statute leaves law enforcement and prosecutors quantifying behaviors to bring a charge of stalking instead of qualifying behaviors. This frustrates prosecutorial efforts and exacerbates the risk for survivors. It leaves the justice system engaged in a terrifying race against the clock. Will we get enough to arrest the suspect before he kills someone? It requires keeping a meticulous paper trail and letting charges stack until there's enough to bring the charge. It's imperative prosecutors and law enforcement have a working and effective stalking statute. SB 1717 clarifies that the reasonable person standard applies directly to the circumstances the victim of family violence is experiencing. For example, there's no problem with receiving a gift unless it's from the person that you're fleeing from. It also allows for the entry of evidence of prior acts by the stalker that constitutes family violence if those acts were known to the victim. Most importantly, centering stalking victim experience by adding the language terrified and intimidated, the most common emotional responses of stalking victims. In my current role as the DVHRT coordinator for TCFB, I support teams focused on the victims at the highest risk of lethality. This bill is critical to homicide prevention, as we know stalking is one of the highest lethality factors, increasing likelihood of homicide 3 times over. When a victim has the courage to come forward, we must ensure our justice system has laws that can be effectively utilized. SB 1717 will take us a long way toward that goal and create further tools for Texas to serve as a bridge between victim safety, homicide prevention, and offender accountability. I urge you to vote in favor of advancing this bill. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Carrie New, you got to work on your clock, man. Carrie New. State your name and who you represent. And
Good morning, committee members.
And let me reemphasize, try to keep things 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. This clock running?
Yeah.
My name's Carrie New. I am Chief of the Family Violence Division for the Rockwall County District Attorney's Office. I am really grateful to you for this opportunity to speak on SB 1717. I have been Chief of the Family Violence Division in Rockwall County for almost 9 years now. In that time, our division has evolved from a single prosecutor prosecuting every family violence case in Rockwall County, yours truly, to 4 prosecutors, 2 investigators, a clerk, and a full-time victim assistance coordinator. And any of you who know Rockwall County may be wondering right now why the smallest geographical county in Texas would need such a robust family violence division. And the answer to that is pretty simple. It's also pretty sad. We're a great place to have a family. Rockwall County is a great place to raise a family. We have great schools. We have safe streets. And because we attract families, we have family violence. Because family violence occurs everywhere there are families. We are no exception to that. The vast majority of our violent offenses are related to family violence in Rockwall County. Our division prosecutes year after year people who murder and kidnap and stalk and assault in the name of love. In addition to prosecution, I'm currently serving my 3rd term with the Texas Council on Family Violence Public Policy Committee, working on their legislative priorities. I am also in my 3rd year on the training committee for the Texas District and County Attorneys Association. I train prosecutors all over the state. I train on topics like the charging difficulties of our current statute, the Texas Penal Code Statute 42072, our stalking statute. As I have learned through my own experience and from fielding questions with officers and prosecutors, the criminal justice system is a delicate ecosystem. Even if officers believe a victim, if they do not understand how to operate within the statute, they do not charge those offenses. If they reach out to prosecutors and receive incorrect information or are rebuffed because the prosecutor themselves doesn't understand how to operate in the statute, then that problem compounds itself.
Excuse me, your time's up. My clock's not working, but please finish.
Okay. In my experience, stalking is the most underutilized statute in our penal code. SB 1717 goes a long way to resolving this. It incorporates changes that clarify and also increase the effectiveness. Key provisions of this law involve including the opportunity to incorporate many instances of stalking-related conduct that victims are experiencing, but that are not currently covered by our current statute. And it does this without increasing the scope of criminalized behavior beyond what is already criminal in the penal code.
Ms. New, I
Yes,
really
sir.
meant, I wanted you to wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
You've done a fine job, but we understand.
Thank you, sir. Let me just say in closing, I would really appreciate a favorable vote on SB 1717 by this committee, and thank you so much for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
We're fine, thank you. Baylor Roachman? It's not working?
I got it this time.
Is it gonna sound off so they'll know it? Yeah, Baylor.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I mispronounced. State your name, who you represent.
Hi, I'm Bella J. Rockman, and I'm a public policy advocate and a proud Texan, and I'm also here speaking a self about my experience as a survivor of stalking.
Okay, try to hold it 2 minutes if
Yes.
you can.
Is it appropriate to set a clock, because, like a minute timer, is it appropriate to set a clock for myself?
We're trying, but,
Well, I can do it here. Is that okay?
no, go ahead. If you're a
Okay.
victim, I'm gonna be very
Thank you. Thank you
generous
for
with
your
my time.
time and your kindness. Okay, so, all right, so I'm not really great at condensing information of this magnitude in this format, which is probably why I dropped out of law school, which I proudly and jokingly say at times. But what my experience is that I seem to have met a lot of really great men and women and people of law enforcement and folks in the legal field or caseworkers or case managers that kept starting to say the same thing, that having someone bring gifts to my door at midnight, they couldn't really do anything about it. Or, if he tried to force his way in but he didn't get in, they couldn't really do anything about it. So please just keep calling us, keep calling us, keep calling us. It was almost kind of like, keep calling us until something happens, until you're not here to say it and somebody has to say it for you because you're deceased. Unfortunately, the level of violence that I experienced also included a traumatic brain injury, which I still manage and live with to this day. So with the history of violence and then the multiple police reports well over 11 or 12, again, I've had good people, I believe, that are well-intentioned say our hands are tied because we cannot move beyond the penal code. And so I just hope that perhaps there could be something so that what's written in the penal code is more clearly defined, so that it's not so vast or so broad, so it's so difficult for people to make right decisions. And I love the slogan of "Don't mess with Texas." And I grew up in a state where we would always hear that growing up. And that's something I love about this place, because I do believe that is kind of embodies who we are as Texans. I just want to enable good people to make good choices in systems. So changing systems, and I think this revising, maybe not throwing out the window, but heavily revising so that it's much easier. It almost boils down to me like playground stuff. When you're on the playground, somebody says stop, like we need to learn how to have appropriate boundaries, and we need to point to very specific habits or behavioral patterns that say that this boundary is being violated. I know that, like, working in media, we always used to say if it bleeds, it leads, but I don't want people to have to bleed for it to lead. I would really like to not be that kind of case, and so that it's more clear. I'm probably close to 2 minutes. I'd rather stop myself than you stop me, but I do want to say I really appreciate you listening to what I have to say, and unfortunately the probably thousands of other people that I might represent.
Very good. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Amanda Aubrey? No oral testimony. Representative herself. Thank you for being here. Amy Breslin, Texas Family Law Foundation. No testimony in support. Jack Rhodey. No testimony in support. Galveston County Criminal District Attorney Thomas Parkinson, representing himself. In support, no testimony. A.J. Loudermilk. Sheriff Loudermilk is in support and does not wish to testify. Anyone else for or against? Samantha Pazik is in support. Texas Association Against Sexual Assault in support, no testimony. Anyone else present who would like to testify for or against Senate Bill 1717? If not, public testimony is closed. Do I hear a motion? Senator Huffman moves that Senate Bill 1717 be reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmer,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Hinojosa,
Aye.
Huffman,
Aye.
Betancourt,
Aye.
Miles,
Aye.
6-0.
There being 6 ayes, no nays, Senate Bill 1717 is reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman and members.
You're welcome. Senator Hall. Senate Bill 385.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Senate Bill 385 amends the Transportation Code to enable a motor vehicle used in the commission of the offense of street racing on a highway to be removed from the roadway. Currently, law enforcement only impounds a vehicle if the street racing offense results in property damage or personal injury. This bill expands the authority of a peace officer to impound such a vehicle by authorizing the immediate removal of dangerous behavior from the roadway. The vehicle in question shall be taken to the nearest licensed vehicle storage facility unless the vehicle is seized as evidence. Current statute requires that the vehicle owner to reimburse the law enforcement agency for any reasonable cost to remove disposition of the property. A first offense for street racing remains a Class B misdemeanor, but the vehicle used would immediately be removed from the roadway. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Senator Benton-Court.
Morning, Senator Hall.
Good morning.
Okay, I think it's a great solution because we have this just absolutely road rage problem that is reflected in a culture where in Austin, you'll have racers taking over a major intersection and for hours, despite the public's dismay at it. So this is one way. If they're going to use a vehicle like this, if you get the vehicle off the street, it won't be available for the next drag race. Is that the intent?
That's the intent. And I would add to that, I am an eyewitness to this. I have a place that's right on Lavaca, and about midnight, the drag racing starts in South Lavaca and goes on for quite a while.
Right. And it's over and over and over again.
That's
even
correct.
though everybody knows exactly when it occurs. Right. Right.
And the main problem we have here is they will do this and they will swap cars because current law, if the owner, if they can only impound the car if it's being driven by the owner. And so they've got to practice, they'll swap cars just so they can race. And so this will help solve that problem.
Very good. Matt Hicks, Texas Department of Public Safety is a resource witness. Nicholas Gephardt, Austin Police would like to testify. And we're going to try to hold folks to 2 minutes. So you've got more than 2 minutes written in front of you, I know. So just tell us what's on your mind this morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Nick Gephardt. I'm a detective in the Organized Crime Division of the Austin Police Department. I'm the lead detective who's been investigating the street takeover event named Operation Burnout for the events that just occurred in Austin. I was asked to give some insight on the takeover events, and I believe the bills brought forth could aid police officers in disrupting and deterring these types of events in the future. I believe it's important to understand the difference between street racing and a street takeover. A street takeover is a coordinated, organized criminal event designed to obstruct the roadways for the purpose of conducting dangerous driving exhibitions.
Do they ever, excuse me if I interrupt, do they use family vehicles, or is that just some speedster? Or?
It's all types of vehicles, sir.
See, my concern would be, obviously, if they do that irresponsibly, we all agree. But then the family the next week wouldn't have a automobile to go to school or.
I think that's an important consideration. In the verbiage, it has the word shall, and I think instead maybe giving officers discretion for instances like that, or maybe a person who's in the car like a child, not being put on the street immediately. Because in this investigation that I conducted, there were children inside of the cars who were not willing participants.
It's a tough call. Yeah, go ahead. I just wanted to clear that up real quick.
Continuing on, these driving exhibitions consist of vehicles performing in combination of burnouts, donuts, drifting type maneuvers, and they also utilize fireworks and gasoline to set the intersections on fire. This occurred while vehicles and pedestrians intentionally shut down and blocked the intersection, preventing uninvolved motorists and pedestrians and emergency vehicles from accessing that road in particular. This event specifically in Austin that transpired, multiple crashes occurred, vehicles hit pedestrians, property was damaged, including multiple police cars, multiple people set on fire, several vehicles evaded from law enforcement, and excuse me, I can finish.
Oh, go ahead.
And the general public's freedom of movement was completely stopped. I believe it's important to give officers dealing with these large-scale events discretion and the ability to impound these vehicles. During this operation, my unit, including DPS and the crime analysts that I worked with, identified 17 suspects and wrote over 30 arrest warrants. I myself just got back from Houston yesterday. I was able to locate and seize several cars used in this event that happened in February.
Would it be fair to ask you, why didn't y'all do something that night? I understand the investigation across the state and even out of state to apprehend these players, but most of us that witnessed it kept wondering, where were y'all that night?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, Austin Police Department is in the middle of an extreme staffing crisis. Usually shifts that have 11 to 12 people only show up with 1 or 2 people. That night specifically, we had over 400 extra 911 phone calls because of this event, with a police department that can't even handle the amount of phone calls that are being taken right now.
That's tragic. That's tragic, and I hope somebody's addressing that problem, because we can pass this bill, but if you don't have law enforcement to enforce it, it'll just be a bill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And at least giving the tools needed for police officers is important, and hopefully the staffing crisis.
Well, we appreciate what you do. Be safe out there.
Thanks, sir.
Dean, if I could,
I'm sorry, Ben.
yeah, you just triggered something, because we have another bill that we've sent in that it combines the Houston side of this equation. So Senator Hall, if I could, we do some work by combining bills here like we did on catalytic mufflers. Would you work with me on this so we can combine these bills together, that we can come out with the strongest possible package? And I believe that did Austin PD ask for the Rangers to come out?
In this task force that I was with,
It was DPS,
we
right.
had DPS, a great counterpart that helped us out because the execution of the search warrants and arrest warrants was statewide. This problem doesn't just happen in Austin. It's a Houston, Dallas, San Antonio problem.
Well, because they're moving the cars, right?
Specifically, the people who did this event in Austin, most of them were from Houston.
Yeah.
They charge in any way for this entertainment? They call it?
They charge
I'm
I'm
sorry.
serious. What, I mean, do they sell tickets? I mean, or on social media,
Oh,
call
no,
people
it's-
to it? I mean, what the hell is
Right. It's
people
almost
gathering at a certain site and endangering themselves, other than they're fools?
right. It's almost like chasing clout for social media, like a reputation.
Attention
style.
getting?
Yeah, and there's also a dark underworld associated with these car clubs specifically that come up in
What element would that be?
different crimes, gun crimes, drug crimes, sophisticated stolen vehicle crimes.
Same folks?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Senator Hall?
Just to respond.
No. Yeah.
Senator Bettencourt, I'm glad to work with you on it. Maybe this is something we could do as an amendment on the floor. Bring them together.
Okay, well, what we tried, last one we do the catalytic, we put them all together in the committee, Bob, but,
Okay,
okay,
whatever
Yeah.
works.
okay. let's-
Senator Huffman?
I would just add, I don't know if it's possible, does the bill include motorcycles too? Is it any, like, motor vehicle?
It
And I
says-
just say that because I was actually driving down the Katy Tollway recently on a Sunday coming back to Austin, and a couple of, there was a big motorcycle, they're all in black on those fast motorcycles, and they got in front of me and just slowed me down to like 35, so they blocked so that they could race in front of me. It was like in Houston on a Sunday afternoon, and they had complete control of the major highway, and it went on for like 20 minutes. I guess I should have called someone, but
No,
I was so shocked. I was just watching it.
It says vehicle. If it doesn't, I can assure you, we will make sure it
Okay.
does.
Yeah.
Because I can tell the difference between a motorcycle right outside my bedroom window.
Exactly,
And an
yeah.
automobile.
Exactly. So I
And
just,
they
I
make,
think it
actually
probably
make a
does
whole
it.
lot more noise.
Yes, I didn't actually look at the bill itself,
Yes.
but just want to make sure that it's broad
will.
enough to include that. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Show Senator King present. John Chancellor, Texas Police Chief, is in support, does not wish to testify. Mitch Landry, Texas Municipal Police Association, wishes to be shown in support. Ann Orion, AAA of Texas is in support. Does not wish to change. Cornell, Dallas is in support, does not wish to testify. Ray Hunt with HBOU in Houston in support, does not wish to testify. Heidi Ruiz, Houston Police Department is in support, does not wish to testify. And Thomas Parkinson, representing himself, is in support. Paige Williams, Dallas County Criminal District Attorney John Crusoe's office is in support. Ron Hawthorne, Sheriff Association of Texas, in support. Clifford Sparks, City of Dallas, is in support. Anyone else present that would like to testify for or against Senate Bill 385? Not, public testimony is closed. Senator Bentoncourt moves. Sure. State your name and who you represent. Bill's in real good shape, though.
My name is Matthew Gill, and I'm a detective with the Austin Police Department Vehicular Homicide Unit. I just wanted to speak on a racing incident that we worked Valentine's Day of this year. A wife was dropping off her husband off of Techno Center Drive, and her name is Denise Cunningham. Miss Cunningham just had a Valentine's lunch with her husband, and she turned right onto a service road. Little did she know that there was 3 vehicles traveling in excess of 100 miles per hour behind her. She was getting up to speed about 14 miles per hour, and one vehicle, the lead vehicle, veered to the left to miss her. The second vehicle did not. It struck her at 110 miles per hour, killing her instantly. Her husband, who was at the office, was pinging her phone because he heard all the ambulances and all the fire trucks that responded, and he noticed that her phone hadn't left the area. And when he found out that it was his vehicle that was involved in the collision, meaning his wife's vehicle, that's when he was there on scene. He basically got to witness the aftermath of the collision. So I'm in support of Senate Bill 385. Any deterrent that can help law enforcement, legislative tool to help law enforcement with preventing this kind of tragedy from happening again in our city.
Very good. Thank you for bringing that.
Could I just comment real quick?
Senator Huff.
Very quickly. I just wanted to thank you for being here, and the other Austin officer who was here. Y'all are extremely professional, very impressive. And I know y'all get a bad rap sometimes here in Austin because we complain a lot about there's not enough police. But I think it's important to note the ones that are working, that we very much appreciate what you're doing and your professionalism.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Very well said. Now, Senator Huffman, I had Bentoncourt already, moves that Senate Bill 385 be reported back to full Senate with favorable recommendation.
I wanted to, but
No, that's not necessarily true. Senator Bentoncourt, did you want to work with Senator Hall between now and the floor?
I do, because we need to add the motorcycle component.
I understand, but you want to do it as it goes forward on the floor.
I'd rather do it in the committee like we did the CAT, but it's up to you, Gene. You know, your call.
It's really up to y'all. Y'all can get together. I mean, Bob, you're the author. You want to leave it pending to work with Bentoncourt?
I think it would be a better bill if they combined it, personally.
Okay, we'll leave it pending. Pending. Good job. Senator Hall, Senate Bill 386.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. On December 3rd, 2021, police officer Richard Houston of the Mesquite Police Department was fatally wounded in the line of duty while responding to a disturbance in the 1500 block of Beltline Road in the city of Mesquite. During the subsequent trial, the defense claimed that the defendant did not know that Officer Houston was indeed a police officer, despite Officer Houston's uniform and vehicle lights being on. Under Section 19.03 of the Penal Code, there exists no presumption of knowledge in murder cases that the defendant knew the victim was either a police officer or a fireman by their uniform. Presumption of knowledge does exist when a police officer is attacked, but not when they are killed in the line of duty. This absence of statute presents a possible barrier to capital murder cases in instances where an officer of the law or a fireman is murdered. Thus, in order to ensure that justice is achieved in such heinous cases, this gap in the law must be closed. Senate Bill 386 amends the Penal Code to state that the actor is presumed to have known that the person murdered was a peace officer or a fireman if the person was wearing a distinctive uniform or badge indicating the person's employment as a peace officer or a fireman, or if the person identified themselves as a peace officer or fireman. This change will provide police and fire officers who are murdered in the line of duty a common sense presumption that the offender knew the victim was a police officer or fireman when the officer is wearing a distinctive uniform or badge. This change in the law is in line with the existing statute that creates a presumption of knowledge in instances when the police or fire is attacked. Furthermore, my bill will protect first responders who are targets for retaliation because of the uniform we require them to wear to protect our communities. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Senator Hall.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm kind of amazed that we didn't already have this on the book. Senator Hinojosa?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
You know, I think I'm a co-author of your bill, but it doesn't, for example, you have an undercover police officer who just plain clothes, that's not covered by the bill, correct?
Yes,
You have to have a uniform on,
right.
or at least,
Or badge.
or badge.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Hall.
Thank you. Several invited witness, Jason Hermes is with the Dallas Criminal Courts District Attorney's Office. You going to testify, or?
Very briefly, Senator. My name is Jason Hermes,
State your name, who you represent.
and I'm with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, but I'm testifying on my own behalf. I was the lead prosecutor in this particular case of Officer Houston. This is Shelley Houston, Officer Houston's wife. I just want to make 2 points to Senator Hinojosa's statement, too. And then, of course, Shelley can tell you more of the details. But this would create a rebuttable presumption, Senator, which would mean that there would be a presumption of knowledge if the officer is fully dressed out in police uniform or a badge or identifies himself or herself as a police officer. But if, in fact, the evidence shows that the defendant was unaware that the person or the victim was a police officer, the presumption could be rebutted and overcome. So there would be no harm to a defendant if the evidence doesn't support that there was knowledge that the person was a police officer. Secondly, I just also want to, I also agree with what the senator said earlier. There is an almost identical presumption that has existed for as long as I've been a prosecutor. And it creates kind of an odd parallel, because if a person shoots and critically injures a police officer who's wearing a uniform, the officer benefits from the presumption. But if that same person kills the officer benefits from no presumption. I think this was an oversight as to what you said, Senator. And I think that could be corrected by the Richard Houston Act.
Very good. Ms. Houston?
Yes.
Yeah.
My name is Shelley Houston, obviously in support of the Bill 386. Thank you for this opportunity to share my family's story and why this amendment is so important to first responders and their families. I've been an elementary school teacher in Texas for 22 years, and one of my students' favorite events is when our first responders come to school for Career Day. They eagerly wave as they drive in, recognizing them simply by their uniform and the lights on their car and their vehicles. There's never a question of who they are. But yet in a courtroom with clear dash cam evidence, that would become the sole argument why a grown man, Jaime Jaramillo, shouldn't be charged with capital murder. The defense would argue redundantly that Jaime wasn't aware my husband, in uniform, police car with lights on, was a police officer. The events of December 3rd, 2021 would become a life-changing day for my family and the members of the Mesquite Police Department. The last 15 months have been full of heartache as our family learns to navigate our life without my husband and the father of our children. In September of last year, we would relive that day as Jaime Jaramillo was tried for capital murder. Both my oldest daughter and I had already viewed both the dash cam and body cam of my husband from that day. We knew, thankfully, that this trial would be swift simply from the clear and obvious video evidence. What we were not prepared for was the argument the defense would take during this trial that Jaime, the gunman, didn't know Richard was a police officer. We were angry, frustrated, heartbroken that this was even a consideration. What was already a tragedy would then be fueled in the courtroom by the statements the defense made as they attempted to persuade jurors that the plain and obvious police uniform, badge, and vehicle was somehow mistaken. As I close this morning, I want to thank the Mesquite Police Department for their unwavering support of my family, to Jason Hermes in the Dallas County DA's office for all of their support and work during the investigation and trial, as well as making this possible, to Senator Hall, Senator Flores, Senator Hinojosa for sponsoring the bill. I'm going to leave you with this morning. Losing a loving father, husband, and 21-year veteran officer is something that we can never change. But what we can change is preventing another family from experiencing even more heartache from the possibility of not receiving justice for capital murder for their first responder. Our family and other first responder families are counting on you to close this gap and protect those that protect and serve our great state. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for being here. We share your anger and frustration, and your being here will make a big difference in fixing to vote this bill out. In fact, don't even need to hear a lot more testimony after you spoke.
Thank you.
But we do have a couple more signed up. David Gill. State your name, officer, and who you represent, and then we're going to vote this bill out.
My name is David Gill. I'm the Chief of Police for the Mesquite Police Department. I'm here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 386. I always hate going after Shelley because nobody
Yeah, I
wants
would
to
too.
hear
In
what I
fact,
have to say
I
after.
think the
after
bill's in real good shape.
Yes. On December 3rd, no crime had been committed when Richard responded to that scene. It was a routine call, family violence or a family dispute, no violence had occurred between a husband, wife, girlfriend, and his daughter was on scene. As Richard, as the all-man officer on scene, tried to get the scene under control, he was violently attacked and murdered. There's no debate on the facts of the case. The car recorded the scene. His body cam recorded the incident. The hardest thing I've ever had to do in my career was watching my friend's last moments until we got to trial. And we spent days discussing whether or not the suspect knew that Richard was a police officer. The defense's argument was that only he could say whether he knew Richard was a police officer, and obviously he would not testify in that. Richard drove a Tahoe onto that scene covered in lights. He wore, absent the tie that I wear before you, the exact uniform that I wear today. If he had assaulted Richard, there would have been a presumption that he knew Richard was a police officer. If Richard had survived that gunshot, he would have presumed that they knew he was a police officer. It was only because he died that we went through that. I want to thank you. I want to thank the senators for authoring this bill, for the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, and Jason Hermes for bringing us down here.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your senator doing an outstanding job bringing this to our attention. I've got several other witnesses who will be testifying with the permission committee. We'll let the clerk read them into the record. I'm anxious to vote on this bill, quite frankly. And so the testimony and the signage will be recorded for the record going forward. But Senator Bettencourt moves Senate Bill 386 be reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmire,
Yes.
Flores,
Aye.
Hinojosa,
Aye.
Huffman,
Aye.
Bettencourt,
Yes.
Miles,
Aye.
King,
Aye.
7-0.
There's being 7 ayes, no zeros. Senate Bill 386 is reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Thank you, witnesses, and your courage, Ms. Houston. Senator Paxton, 386, and I believe you have a committee substitute, Senator, on Senate Bill 806.
Yes, sir.
Senator, let me adopt substitute. Senator Paxton sends up committee substitute for Senate Bill 806 and recognize her to explain. First of all, is there objection to the adoption of it? Claire, here's none. You want to explain the substitute?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. The committee substitute simply makes this alleged council version of the bill. Under current statute, when law enforcement responds to domestic violence calls, they must provide the victims with a written notification of their rights. Advocates for survivors of sexual assault have identified that a similar notification would benefit victims of sexual assault by informing them of their rights, which include obtaining a forensic medical exam, anonymously tracking case evidence updates, and requesting the local prosecutor to file a criminal complaint. Research has shown a very strong correlation between a positive experience during the initial reporting process and a victim's long-term healing and experience with systems. Senate Bill 806 updates and strengthens existing notification requirements for peace officers and law enforcement personnel to ensure that victims of sexual assault are connected with resources as quickly as possible to begin the healing process and prevent re-victimization. The language is modeled after the type of notification that law enforcement is currently required to provide to domestic violence victims. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? If not, Julian Gonzalez. State your name, please, and who you represent.
Good morning. Thank you for hearing this bill today. I'm Juliana Gonzalez. I'm the Senior Director of Sexual Assault Services at the Safe Alliance here in Central Texas, and we're in support of Senate Bill 806. And I feel like this is an easy win, so I won't take up too much of your time. We have the resources to take care of folks in the ways that are described. And what's lacking right now is that survivors don't know that they can get to those resources. In fact, we have those resources thanks to the state of Texas in great part. So the state is already taking care of funding rape crisis centers in great part, making SANE exams possible for survivors through funding via the Crime Victims Compensation Fund and the Attorney General's office. But survivors just don't know how to make their way to us or don't know that they have the ability to access those rights. And so it'd be a nice, easy fix. When we see survivors who don't know how to access these rights, it's because, generally it's because law enforcement is lacking in knowledge or resources. You've already heard about the lack of resources this morning, right? They just don't know. They don't have something handy to share with survivors. And they are the point of contact that survivors know to trust in these moments. And so if we can empower those officers who are doing so much work with so little resource, if we can just give them the information that they need to pass along to survivors in that moment of crisis in a very clear way, then they'll get those survivors to us, and we can provide counseling, legal services, resources, shelter, housing, SANE exams, evidence collection, medical care, STI prevention, pregnancy prevention, injury assessment, strangulation assessment. We'll take care of it from there. I'll be glad to answer any questions, but just really grateful for your time and your attention to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Mike Sweeney. Mike, state your name and keep it to 2 minutes. Who you represent?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Whitmire and Ms. Paxson, Senator Paxson, for championing this such important piece of legislation. My name is Mike Sweeney. I work with Texas Association Against Sexual Assault, affectionately known as TASA. I've done so since 2013. Prior to that, I was a law enforcement officer for approximately 30 years, graduate of the FBI National Academy, and I retired as Chief of Detectives. This bill, SB 806, is a priority for TASA, and TASA represents the rape crisis centers across the state. They're members in our organization, and they've all voted for this legislation as well and approve of that. It's our priority. It's also a priority, as you heard, anybody that works with sexual violence and violence against women issues.
Put us down. It's our priority, too.
Yes, sir. I know that, and I appreciate that,
Now,
too.
go ahead. You just don't want to down.
As to the prior testimony, I agree with it wholeheartedly. In fact, the Institute on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault at the University of Texas in Austin recently conducted an in-depth study of 70 individuals of sexual assault survivors, right? Most of which reported their crimes to the police that happened against them. Of that 70%, most of them had no idea what resources were available to them. And 75% of those expressed a need for counseling, forensic exams, and just had no way to navigate or understand our systems, our judicial systems, what services are out there to provide. It's my experience,
Go ahead.
quicker we get with that survivor victim and get something in their hands that gives them a roadmap. We're a nation in a state of preparedness. We're prepared for natural disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes. No one is prepared to be sexually assaulted. And when this happens, paired with the trauma that they experience and the fear of the unknown, navigating these systems, it's imperative that we pair them with the Rape Crisis Center and an advocate, help navigate the systems to bring them out of that darkness and confusion.
Very good.
All right, thank you,
Bill's
sir.
in good shape. Thank you
Yes, sir.
for being here. We have a large number of witnesses in support. We're going to read that in the record later after we hear from witnesses. Senator Huffman moves that committee substitute. Anyone present want to testify for or against committee substitute for Senate Bill 806? Not public testimony closed, and we'll read your name in the record if you signed up. Senator Huffman moves that committee substitute for Senate Bill 806 be reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmer,
Yes.
Lotus.
Aye.
Hinojosa,
Aye.
Huffman,
Aye.
Bettencourt,
Yes.
Miles,
Aye.
King.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, 7 ayes, no zeros. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 806 reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you,
What do
Mr.
want?
Chairman.
You're welcome.
Members.
Thank you for making that.
Mr. Chairman, we've kind of had an upgrade on the committee. She's been here all morning, reading reading all the witness testimony.
Senator Huffman.
Senator King, you have any
Go to
comments?
yours.
No argument.
No argument, all right. Okay.
1527. Huh? Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of it. You ready, John?
I'm ready.
Chair recognizes Senator Huffman on Senate Bill 1527.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Members, Texas Human Trafficking Prevention Task Force is statutorily required to develop legislative recommendations that will strengthen state and local efforts to prevent human trafficking, protect and assist human trafficking victims, curb economic markets that facilitate human trafficking, and investigate and prosecute human trafficking offenders. Senate Bill 1527 codifies legislative recommendations from the Texas Human Trafficking Prevention Task Force for this session. Specifically, this bill will offer statutory cleanup provisions that include adding TEA and TxDOT to the Human Trafficking Prevention Coordinating Council, requiring the task force to examine the link between trafficking and massage businesses, moving the no trafficking zones provision to the correct statutory section, modifying statutory language to include offers and agrees, expanding extraneous offense admissibility to include continuous and labor trafficking, and increasing the effectiveness of data collection efforts. Additionally, the bill increases investigating and prosecutorial tools by adding child grooming protections and increasing penalties for traffickers that use excessive force. Lastly, the bill protects victims further by flagging driver's license of individuals convicted of human trafficking prosecutions, allowing outcry witnesses in all human trafficking prosecutions involving minors, expanding the offenses for when witness outcry statements can be offered, adding protection for victims of trafficking with significant disabilities, and enhancing child pornography sentences when multiple images are possessed, or promoted. So, overall, this bill is the Human Trafficking Omnibus Bill. It focuses on effective ways to revamp our current statutes to better protect victims and enhance prosecutorial and investigatory tools for human trafficking.
Any
That's it.
questions? Thank you. We have a couple of resource witnesses, Matt Hicks with the DPS. If you have any questions, thank Matt for being here. Amy Meredith, Office Attorney General, Division Chief, Human Trafficking. We have a large number of people that have signed up. AJ Loudermilk, Sheriff Al Loudermilk, signed up in support. Jason Sabo, written testimony only, representing children at risk. James Cornell, Dallas Police Association in support. Brian Hawthorne, Sheriff Association in Texas in support. Mitch Landry, Texas Municipal Police Association in support. Ray Hunt, HBOUs in support. Heidi Ruiz, Houston Police Department in support. Thomas Parkinson is in support. And John Chancellor, Texas Police Chiefs Association in support. Joe Morris, Gay Warden Peace Officers Association in support. And David Gonzalez, Texas Criminal Defense Attorneys. Anyone else present that would like to testify? Carlos Ortiz, San Antonio Police Officer Association is in support. Anyone else like to testify for or against? Chair hears none. Senator Flores moves that Senate Bill 1527 be reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmer,
Yes.
Lotus.
Aye.
Hinojosa,
Aye.
Huffman,
Aye.
Bettencourt,
Yes.
King.
Aye.
6-0.
Means 6 ayes, no zero. Senate Bill 1527 reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Takes care of that one. We'll go to Hinojosa. Senator Hinojosa on Senate Bill 991. You want to lay out the
Thank you, Mr.
Gonna
Chairman.
move to
and members.
adopt your committee substitute? Senator
I do. I have
Senator Hinojosa moves and sends up a committee substitute for Senate Bill 991. Is there objection to the adoption? Chair is none. Senator Hinojosa on committee substitute for Senate Bill 991.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 991 relates to the establishment of a crime laboratory portal by the Department of Public Safety. Currently, each crime laboratory independently manages their records through customized laboratory information management systems. These systems lack the ability to communicate with each other and lack a uniform way of processing requests from a prosecutor or defense attorney for lab reports. Presently, requested materials are provided by the laboratory via the traditional paper-driven discovery process. Additionally, laboratories communicate their results primarily in the form of lab reports, but the information contained within an entire full laboratory case record can be just as important to the prosecutor or defense attorney when evaluating a criminal case. This present framework makes for an inefficient and expensive approach that poses a significant risk that laboratories may inadvertently hold into exculpatory, impeachment, or mitigating information. Senate Bill 981 provides a statewide technology solution to facilitate full discovery of forensic crime laboratory records. Department of Public Safety will be required to establish a central computerized laboratory portal that processes requests and makes lab records available to stakeholders as content is created or modified. This portal will be maintained by DPS and will allow Texas Crime Labs to meet their legal disclosure and discovery obligations under the Code of Criminal Procedure, including the Michael Morton Act. This important technology solution is supported by prosecutors, the defense bar, and judges as a major step forward in ensuring the fair and efficient resolution of criminal cases. I've also worked with Finance Chair Huffman and the Finance Committee to make sure that the funds needed to create this portal are in Senate Bill 1, and it's a cost of about $3.2 million.
Very good. Brady Mills and Lynn Garcia, I understand want to come together. State your name and who you represent.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Brady Mills. I'm the chief of the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Laboratory Division.
And good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Lynn Garcia, and I'm the General Counsel of the Texas Forensic Science Commission.
Okay, you got a couple of minutes.
I'm testifying on the bill as a resource. The senator did a great job of outlining what the bill does. From a laboratory perspective, it's our job to help prosecutors release records to the defense in these cases. With 125,000 cases a year, a lot of jurisdictions around the state are turning into 100% discovery. That has become a full-time business for us. We are to the point where we're removing individuals from doing science work to records work. And so a technology solution is the solution for us to assist the prosecutors with their obligation to release records to the defense.
Very, very good. Thank you for being here. Ms. Garcia?
Just from the perspective of the commission, when we conduct investigations, sometimes we see that it's not so much the scientific issues that are problematic, but the information flow. And this is a smart and modern way to help the labs come into compliance with the Michael Morton Act and their discovery obligations. I'm happy to answer questions. The committee substitute aligns our disciplinary process with the process for forensic analysts. It's something that happened when we were moved to the Office of Court Administration, so it's really more a cleanup than anything.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. One of the things that happens is that each crime laboratory has its own system of managing the lab reports, and they'll communicate with each other. It's all based on paperwork and not up to date on the new technology available to provide a much more efficient way and cost-effective way of doing
Very
this.
good. David Gonzalez signed up. State your name and who you represent.
David Gonzalez, the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers, in support of the bill.
Fine.
This bill essentially implements what you have directed trial courts and lawyers to do, which is to expedite homicide and capital murder cases. One of the single greatest wait periods is us getting resets to be able to get that information from the lab. And it's a process where the defense has to ask, the prosecutor has to then ask, the lab has to respond, and this just eliminates all of that process where everything is put online, both sides have access to it, and it eliminates having to go through the trial court time and time and time again.
Very good. Thank you for being here. Jack Rhodey, Galveston County District Attorney, in support.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, members. Jack Rhodey, Galveston County District Attorney, here to speak in favor of the bill. Nothing but good things to say about the bill. It more than anything takes away one more possibility of inadvertent human error that could lead to failure to disclose information. It provides the state and defense with full access to the information, reducing the risk of cases being overturned on appeal and reducing the risk that someone who's innocent might be wrongfully convicted for failure to disclose
Very
the
good.
information. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Peter Stout. Mr. Stout, state your name, who you represent.
Good morning. Peter Stout, President and CEO of Houston Forensic Science Center and also President of Texas Association of Crime Lab Directors. From the crime labs, good thing. We need this, please. Thank you.
Now I'm going to ask you, the bill's in great shape. It's a great concept. What, and you and I have worked together, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you this, but why do you come down and be a witness on a bill like this?
Just in case there's something else that pops up. You never know.
I'm sitting there wondering the profile of people that travel to Austin and care enough to sign up a card, certainly when the bill is going to pass unanimously. What the hell brings you to town?
You know, this stuff is important, and I have spent time in federal legislation, state legislators, municipal legislators.
You care.
I care, exactly.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. We appreciate everyone that's testifying.
Yeah,
Joe Morris.
that's why he's CEO, see?
Yeah, that's why he does what he does and when I do what I do. Joe Morris, no testimony, Game Warden Association in support. Mitch Landry, Texas Municipal Police Association in support. Brian Hawthorne, Sheriff Association in support. Ray Hunt, HPLU. Ray, why do you come to town? That's a really good question. You just want to be with us. In support. Okay, anyone else? Public testimony is closed. Senator Flores moves that committee substitute for Senate Bill 9191 be reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. We got the same members we had last time. Go ahead.
Okay. Whitmire.
Yes.
Flores.
Aye.
Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
Betancourt.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
6-0.
6-0. There have been 6 ayes, no nays. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 991 reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Senator Flores moves it be certified for local and consent. Is there objection? Chair hears none.
Senator Whitmire.
Granted, I'm going to move that Senator Huffman's Senate Bill 1527
how'd
be
you know that's
reported
what I was
back
gonna
to the
ask?
full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So granted.
Okay, Senator Local, thank you.
You got it? I'm reading your mind. Okay, the reason I came to work this morning is to hear Senate Bill 876 by Senator Flores. That's the main reason I came down here today.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members, in 2011, the legislature established the Licensed Breeders Program under the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations, TDLR, with House Bill 1451, which was sponsored by our chairman, Dean Whitmire. Currently, any person who has 11 or more adult intact female dogs or cats and breeds them and sells or exchanges at least 20 animals per year must be licensed and shall be inspected. People that breed as a business should be looked at differently than breeding for a hobby. And this bill does not impact Texas hobby breeders who breed 4 or fewer females a year. There is a clear distinction, and this bill does not change that. The licensing and regulation of dog and cat breeders was intended to combat unscrupulous operators who often improperly shelter animals and provide inadequate care and veterinary attention. The statute was originally designed for large-scale facilities and is too limited in scope to properly regulate the industry. Considering the average dog litter is 5 pups, a breeder with less than 11 breeding females could legally house and sell a significant number of animals without a license. The goal of Senate Bill 876 is to redefine a dog and cat breeder by lowering the threshold to 5 or more intact females, dogs or cats, for a person who is engaged in the business of breeding those animals for sale or for exchange, and by doing away with the minimum requirement of sales in a calendar year. Senate Bill 876 will allow TDLR to identify and monitor these facilities, which is necessary to improve the livelihood of these animals. Moreover, this bill maintains all of the exemptions currently in the program for personal use. That's dogs bred for herding, livestock, working on farms and ranches, dogs bred for competing in field trials or hunting tests or similar organized performance events, as well as dogs bred to hunt, track, point, flush, or retrieve. So, Mr. Chairman, members, to ensure proper care and welfare of our four-legged friends is necessary to ensure compliance of businesses dealing with Texas animals and protect the basic necessities of their life: housing, food, and sanitation, and veterinary care. With that, I open for any questions.
Senator Bettencourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Flores, so this, obviously, all personal use is exempted,
Yeah,
right?
yes, personal use.
Personal use, right. So now, do we have any idea how many people are currently licensed and how many people would be licensed?
We have a TDLR here
Okay.
present as a resource witness, and they will be able to answer that question.
Great.
Thank you.
You can come on down. I'll take you out of order. State your name and who you represent.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Senators. I'm Steve Bruno, Steve Bruno, Legislative Director at TDLR. Currently, Senator, we have 142 licensees in the program. We anticipate that it will expand under this.
And right, and by how much?
Our anticipation right now is at least 50. That's our analysis, but we would see it's an existing program, so it's not going to take any extra resources. It's already set up.
And if it's an existing program, exactly what people are licensing up for and how much do they pay?
People who are required to be licensed by the current law, which is the 11 or more plus 20 or more sales. That's where we get to our 142. And depending on the number of breeding females, the fee is either $300 or $500 for a 2-year license.
Okay, so $300 or for 1 year and $500 for 2?
No, sir, it's a 2-year license. That fee is staggered based on the total number of breeding
I see.
females.
Okay. So
Yes, sir.
you have a
It's
range.
a threshold of 0 to 25 and 25 or more.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good.
Yes, sir. Thank
you for being here. Ronald Ducharme. Ronald, tell us in about 2 minutes what you think.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Ronald Ducharme. I'm in favor of this bill and with Rescue Magazine. We're an animal welfare organization based out of Central Texas. I have the privilege of working with over 50 rescues and shelters. And I have a prepared speech, but in the prepared of time, I gave it to you, and I'm just going to kind of ad lib here a little bit about what it
That's the
entails.
most effective way to testify.
So anyways, with this bill will help the animal shelter industry. Right now, we all have one thing in common, and they all tell me the same thing. They're overran with animals. Too many animals in there in facilities. And if you look at the last page that I put in with that prepared statement I have, is the shelter Bell County. I'm on the advisory board for that shelter in Bell County. And you can see that last year, 1,200 animals had to be euthanized. That's just one shelter out of many shelters. If we have a problem with animals being overrun in the state, we don't want to, add to it. And this bill will help alleviate some of that problem. If you allow breeders to indiscriminately breed animals, it relates to health conditions, inbreeding. Inbreeding, for example, will cause aggression, medical issues, and ultimately the taxpayers of Texas will be affected by that. The animals themselves are affected by that also. So this bill will help with this program, and we appreciate a favorable.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Quick question.
Senator Bettencourt.
Right now, we got the Kennel Club opposed, and you guys are for. Is there some common ground here that we could get to? I'm curious.
Common ground, I'm sorry, I missed part of your question.
Well, I'm just trying to ask the obvious. Okay, the Kennel Club is against this bill. You obviously are for it. Is there some common ground that we're overlooking here?
Well, I think right now with the limit of the 5, that is good. I mean, most animal shelter people want everybody who breeds for a profit to be licensed, so.
The truth is, it's a pretty good compromise, Senator Benton, if you look at all the stakeholders, it's been worked and reached this level of,
If I, to his point, though, my notes are still showing that the American Kennel Club is against. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out.
well, it's a numerical number. You just have to decide how much of the number of.
So I can speak on the AKC part of it.
Sure.
When I was growing up, my mom and dad were AKC breeders of bird dogs, English setter bird dogs. And they didn't have multiple dogs. They only had 1 to 2 in their time, and they did it for a short period of time. And I remember that when it come to inspection time, people would come over to the house, wanted to see the dogs, wanted to see the male and female, where they were kept, how they were kept, wanted to know that my dad had health records on them, all their vaccinations, any x-rays, or anything they needed. My dad would provide everything for them. So they get inspected. And I know there are some out there that would probably be against that, saying they're already, under an inspection type thing. So, I mean, but
I haven't worked it, if I could take the liberty of saying, the Kennel Association will always be opposed to it because they don't want to be regulated, because it's an industry for them. So you've got to decide if which interest is the strongest. Senator Flores and I believe this is a reasonable regulation, and they opposed a higher number years ago, and they've done quite well. So I think they'll do quite well under this provision.
So my father, as an AKC breeder, he welcomed people. He wanted to make sure that people looked at the dogs and that. So he welcomed an inspection, so to speak. So,
yeah.
Dean, with due respect, can we actually hear from the Kennel Club?
Yeah. Y'all just be patient. We're going to let them. I'm not going to speak for them. I just been down this road, and they're going to not be happy with anything that interferes with their industry, in my judgment, in my experience. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you.
Gloria Centeno, I'm proud to say, is Unity for and Barrio Dogs of Houston. Does a great job east of downtown.
Good morning, Chair Whitmire and members. Yes, my name is Gloria Centeno. I am the founder of Barrio Dogs and also the co-founder of Unity for Solution. Both organizations serve the community to address animal overpopulation, abuse, and neglect. The City of Houston has an animal welfare crisis. It's a serious problem. University of Texas School of Public Health did a survey and identified that the dog and cat population is the most frequent neighborhood problem by respondents. Over 1 to 4 respondents identified that the stray dog and cat problem is a serious problem, more serious than crime and pollution. So how does that connect to commercial breeding? Up to 30% of the Texas shelters and rescue groups are purebred, originally from dogs being bred for profit. One of the most popular is the Frenchie Bulldog. We are saturated with those animals in our community. Dogs, and there's puppies that are sold in Houston stores, and also adding to the problem that are not spayed and neutered. Houston is curbing the problem with addressing with ordinances, with requiring breeders to obtain permits, eliminating the roadside sales, alongside with selling the puppies in the pet stores. The problem is that the counties next to Houston are not safeguarded from these breeding ordinances like Waller, Grimes, Montgomery. And again, dogs and cats from unlicensed breeders are not spayed and neutered. So on behalf of Unity for Solution and Barrio Dogs, we are in support of the SB 876. We believe that regulating breeders that are unlicensed is the most important thing to do. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? Thank you for being here. Stacy Smith. Who's the opposition? State your name, who you represent, please.
Yes, my name is Stacy Smith, and I'm here today on behalf of myself and Humane Tomorrow, a rescue group based in North Texas, and I support SB 876. I watched the hearing for the House Companion Bill last week and felt compelled to come down here today after hearing several breeders testify that the AKC regularly inspects breeders, that the requirement to be inspected is overly burdensome, and that Texas does not need to license breeders because dogs from good breeders do not end up in shelters. I'm here to tell you that they do. The current law took effect on September 1st, 2012. 1 month later, on October 2nd, our local animal services was called out in the middle of the night to capture 51 Maltese dogs that had been abandoned on a country road. I cannot overstate the terrible condition that these dogs were in. In addition to being terrified and unsocial, many were so old, injured, or matted that they could barely move. They had obviously been caged for their entire lives, were covered with years of feces and urine, and had a list of health issues too long to share. Animal Services was overwhelmed caring for the dogs. Our organization took them and incurred tens of thousands of dollars in medical costs getting them healthy, but many never fully recovered psychologically. And this happened again a few days later in neighboring Tarrant County. Breeders in Texas knew this law would impact them, and they dumped the evidence rather than face inspection. The Dog and Cat Breeder Act has worked as a deterrent, and thank you, Senator Whitmire, for your work on that. With regard to AKC's dogs being in shelters, in 2016, we took in 10 English Mastiffs from an AKC breeder in Brownwood in Senator King's district. She was a show breeder, well respected in the community, and her dogs were highly sought after. Her home, which I visited, where the dogs lived and were raised, was filthy, in disrepair, and unhealthy for people, much less dogs. Those dogs were malnourished, the puppies suffered long-term health issues as a result, and 10 dogs removed from her home went into the rescue system in Texas at no expense to the breeder. I don't oppose all breeding. I grew up raising and showing Labrador Retrievers under the AKC, but it is a mystery to me as to why AKC breeders oppose a bill that sets them apart from puppy mills and protects the breeds that they love simply because it requires them to be inspected by someone other than the AKC. I think we can do better in Texas, and thank you for this bill.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Natalie Lynch. Natalie, state your name and who you represent. Yourself, I guess.
My name is Natalie Lynch, and I'm testifying on my own behalf for the bill. I'm the past president of the Animal Law Section of the State Bar and a past commissioner of the TDLR Dog and Cat Breeding Program, and I sat in the welfare seat. During my term, I, of course, worked closely with my commission peers who are veterinarians and breeders. We all got along, and we all mostly were aligned in our expectations for the program. Breeders wanted their chosen profession to be respected. Animal welfare workers wanted intentionally bred animals to have lifelong families, and involved veterinarians wanted those animals to be safe and well with the breeders and in their families. We all wanted the same things. But current standards haven't worked. The dog and cat breeding industries in Texas are not protected. The shelters remain overrun with intentionally bred but now unwanted animals, and those animals are not well. Additionally, the abusive breeders aren't paying taxes on their sales, which undermines the economy of those law-abiding micro-business breeders. To be clear, this new proposed verbiage is carefully crafted to target the abusive breeders. It will regulate only what is beyond this industry's ability to self-regulate. Cat and dog breeders that are working within the centuries-old craft already exceed the standards of this bill and will remain in compliance without any changes for their practices. My time on the TDLR Commission helped me understand that the vast majority of this industry, of breeding industry actors far exceed the standards outlined in the bill. The proposed amendments merely shine light on those abusive breeders attempting to ride the coattails of an industry and costing the rest of us. Thank you for working on this and for helping this bill get through. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you for being here. We have several signed up in opposition. Let's start with Mary Morrison.
Good morning, Chairman Whitmire and members of the Criminal Justice Committee. My name is Mary Nicole Morrison. I am your constituent, Chairman Whitmire, and I am speaking today on behalf of the Toy Club of Greater Houston, of which I am the Legislative Liaison and the Rescue Chair. I am also the Legislative Liaison for the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel Club of Greater Houston. We are all in opposition to Senate Bill 876, and The principal reason why is precisely what has been said here before. We were breeding dogs and showing dogs and titling dogs long before the original Dog and Cat Breeder Act passed and exceeding your minimum requirements. We did not deserve this excessive regulation, which quite honestly requires me to open my personal home, my bedroom where my dogs sleep, and imposes arbitrary and unnecessary standards on my activities with my personal property. Furthermore, as a rescue chair, believe you me, I want to be put out of a job. I want to wake up in a state where every animal who is bred is wanted, loved, and cherished for their entire life. But this bill is not going to help that. What it is going to do is drive hobbyist and preservation breeders, because not everyone does field trial. Cavalier King Charles Spaniels are companion animals. We maybe do agility, rally, obedience, and conformation showing, among other things, but that's not included.
How large is your business? Put a face on your business. How many?
I currently only have 3 brood bitches, and none of them are.
So this bill won't affect you?
It doesn't affect me, but it might in the future.
Well, see, we can't.
I don't know if those brood bitches are going to turn out. I don't know how many I might need to keep. I don't know what I'm going to
I appreciate you being here, but you put a good face on this bill not affecting you top side or bottom.
But it does affect my ability in the future to breed, because I need other breeders to breed dogs and
More than
bitches
5
that I can
bitches,
breed
you're
to.
probably in trouble.
And I also show dogs. It affects my ability to show dogs, since my dogs and bitches must be intact.
Oh, okay. Anything else? We appreciate you. Thank you.
I'm available to answer questions afterwards.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Jacob Hupp. Jacob, you've been patient. I've been watching you all morning. State your name and who you represent.
Jacob Hupp, I represent the American Kennel Club. Chair Whitmire, members of the committee, and Vice Chair Flores. I want to be very clear. We have reached out to Senator Flores' office on a number of occasions to find common ground on this legislation. We still would like the opportunity to do that. AKC is here today on behalf of our 302 kennel clubs in Texas, comprised of thousands of Texans committed to responsible pet ownership. We must express serious concerns in opposition to Senate Bill 876 because this bill will violate the constitutional rights of AKC's constituents by opening the entirety of their private homes to inspection. The law that created the Dog and Cat Breeder Act was never intended to regulate small-scale hobbyists that operate private breeding programs in their homes, or those who merely own intact animals. The elimination of the Dog and Cat Breeder Act's commercial activity requirement would create a policy whereby many home-based hobbyists' mere ownership of dogs would be regulated as commercial entities. Existing law presumes, and this is very important, existing law presumes an intact dog is used for breeding purposes and requires the owner to prove that the dog is not going to be used for breeding purposes. That is nearly an impossible task. It's been referenced a number of times that 4 intact females constitutes a hobby breeder. I want to clarify that federal law requires licensure for those that own 4 intact female dogs and sell dogs sight unseen. That means wholesale to pet brokers, pet dealers, who then in turn sell those dogs to the general public. Hobby breeders do not sell dogs sight unseen. AKC sanctioned 1,300.
Never.
I will not say never, but if they do, they should be federally licensed already.
I'm just curious.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to interrupt your thought.
AKC clubs are comprised.
Are you their attorney? Do you have a kennel, or what?
I just represent the American Kennel Club. I'm a lobbyist for them.
Okay, sounds good.
AKC clubs are comprised of small-scale hobbyists who own dogs primarily for the purpose of breed preservation, participating in AKC events, and in some cases providing a very small number of pets to a few carefully selected homes. These are not commercial entities. AKC firmly believes this bill will only serve to punish responsible dog owners and breeders, and it will fail to bring those already operating outside of the scope of the law into compliance. This is evidenced by the Sunset Commission's recommendation to sunset the law. They did not recommend improvements to the law. And the final thing I do want to say is this would be the most restrictive state breeder licensing law in America if passed as currently written. We really would like to work with you, Senator Flores, to try to find some common ground and actually hold everyone who sell dogs accountable. This will not hold everybody that sells dogs accountable. Those operating outside of the scope of the law will continue to operate outside of the scope of the law. AKC can offer policy solutions that hold everybody who sells a dog accountable in the state
Very
of Texas.
good. What about the number of 5? That's your real objection, isn't it?
It's the commercial activity, frankly, is more of the objection, because by the very definition of AKC conformation shows, which are not exempted from this law, by the very definition of them, they exist to preserve the champion bloodlines and the pedigrees of purebred dogs. So by the very definition of those events, we're engaged in breeding.
Did you hear the earlier witnesses about the crisis that was described, the out-of-control breeding of dogs?
Yeah, we want to be a part of that solution. We don't feel that this legislation achieves that end.
Okay.
I have a question.
Senator Huffman.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand this. So you talk about, are those who merely own intact dogs get drawn into this? Could you explain how that works? So, because you have to have an intact dog to show, right?
Yes, correct.
So you can't show a dog that's...
As I said, there's two reasons for that. You have to prove that you're not breeding these dogs. So even if you
presumption that you are breeding
dogs
if you own
intact,
Yeah.
if you own intact
That sounds
dogs.
problematic to me.
We're extremely concerned about that provision, and like I said, by the very nature of AKC conformation events, they exist to preserve breeding stock of champion bloodlines. I mean, that's
So your concern isn't as much toward the number that you can have, but the presumption that if you have them,
we would
Am I
like
understanding that?
we would like to see commercial activity in the bill, that there should be actual commercial activity. And one of the biggest issues is you cannot, many home-based hobbyists, the existing commercial regulations are unattainable. They have to have primary enclosures 3 times the size of their outdoor enclosure has to be 3 times the size of their primary enclosure. Well, if their primary enclosure is the entirety of a house, you could be talking about 12,000, 15,000 square feet. You would have to have drainable surfaces in their primary enclosure. Well, how are you going to have drainable surfaces in a home that's already been built? These are some of the existing commercial regulations that cannot be attained by some of the foremost and most responsible breeders in the United States right now. These are the top breed experts in the world.
so you mentioned that this would be the most restrictive bill in the United States. Is there a state that has significant restrictions that you've been able to work with that somewhere?
Ohio has a fairly good existing law that we worked with the state of Ohio on. There's a few other states, I don't want to say any in particular that I'm not 100% certain on, because I only cover the central U.S., but I know that Ohio has existing regulations that we would be okay with. I don't want to say okay with, but would be much preferred to these regulations.
Right. Okay, so there should have been. Anyway, we got it.
But we do want to find common ground. We are not opposed to that whatsoever.
Thank you. Marlon Crowley?
No, just to get him to work on the bill.
Good job.
Yeah, I hate to work with that headset because it's a very. These are people that will be upset too.
State your name, who you represent, and try to limit it to 2 minutes.
My name is Martin Krolick, and I'm a longtime hobby breeder. I represent myself and the Responsible Pet Owners Alliance of Texas. In order to continue to get the breed that I wanted, I went to show people years ago.
Yeah.
Now I'm the president of the Lone Star Fox Terrier Club, legislative liaison for AKC, the American Fox Terrier Club, and a director for the Responsible Pet Owners Alliance. I'm opposed to 876 and companion bills because I would not be able to continue my hobby because of the commercial restrictions inherent in this bill.
So your hobby is raising your terriers?
Pardon?
Your hobby is raising the terriers?
Raising them, and I can get to
And
why.
how many female dogs do you have?
My puppies are born in my home.
I got it.
Lots of times in my wife's lap.
And that's nice, but how many?
Okay.
How many,
And,
how many females do you have?
I have one female.
Okay, so this bill.
Now,
this bill
I have
affect
one
you
female
either?
right now, but if I have a litter of puppies that
I
are
don't
4
think-
puppies,
I
then
don't think that-
I'm over the limit.
I don't think the bill speaks to your female puppies. It's your producing female mama dogs,
It said on someone showing up.
sometimes called bitches.
When you have puppies, they'll be a male or
I
a
got
female,
that.
and they'll
I
be
got
intact,
that.
and I keep them intact.
That's
for-
not there. We can
for
clear
show.
that up. We'll make sure puppies are not covered.
Okay, so the puppies are born in my home. We stay with them, sleep with them on the floor.
I've done the same thing. Go
for
ahead.
3 days until they can govern their body temperature. we go to great lengths to make sure these dogs are healthy.
Good.
We keep the dogs intact for future breeding. I guess I have a whole lot more to say, but I guess you're going to cut me off here. So
Now, why would you
in
assume
closing,
that? Of course, I'm not going to cut you off. Go ahead, but
Okay.
be
Well,
sensitive to the time. I want to hear about you sleeping.
we've been doing
with-
this for
sleeping with
20
those puppies.
years. We've been doing this for 20 years. We started with developing the foundation bitch to do this 20 years ago. She has won 3 Best in Shows, and including 1 Best in Show puppy. So you can't achieve that without the best absolute care given to these dogs.
I got you, and I congratulate you on that, but his
Okay.
bill's not going to affect that
Okay.
dog.
The recommendations of expert breeders, we are able to achieve this goal. We do a great job of raising the puppies, breeding them, and so forth, but the experts that we have tell us who to put together.
Okay, very good.
Our breed right now is 141th in popularity. That's almost extinct. If this bill is passed, you're going to put a lot of low popularity dogs out of extinction. You're going to they will not be able to continue breeding under this program.
Okay, very good.
It is a concern to me that no one from the legislature has contacted the Kennel Club like AKC or United Kennel Club or the Responsible Pet Owners Alliance or ADBA or NAIA, National Animal Interest Alliance, to give us a chance to weigh in on these regulations that will definitely affect our community.
Well, I guess he didn't want to contact people he knew were going to be opposed to his bill. That's kind of.
So you don't want to contact?
No, we're having a public hearing. You can line up. I've got a stack of
Okay,
cards.
I understand.
It's a process right
But-
here. Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Good job.
Okay.
Michelle Stosky.
Hello, all.
State your name and who you represent, please.
My name is Michelle Stowski. I am the owner of Texas AKC Puppies. I have been a hobby breeder for 16 years. I raise around 15 puppies a year. I raise puppies to be used as service dogs. I need 8 intact females so I can rotate them. No female dog should be bred repeatedly throughout her life. I breed 1 female every other year. That's why I need a pack of females. I raise and train.
You charge it for them?
Yes.
So you are doing it for a profit?
Yeah, but it's 15 puppies or less for the whole year. I raise and train 2 litters a year. I have 0 employees. I do it all by myself from start to finish. Puppies are whelped in my private bedroom, and I would be very uncomfortable if an inspector had to enter my bedroom in order to inspect the whelping box, because there are dog diseases that are highly contagious and deadly, like parvo and distemper. I do not have an outdoor kennel. All my dogs live inside my home. We also keep females intact for their well-being. It is scientifically proven that dogs are healthier if they are kept intact. I am not in favor of Bill SB 876 because I am not a commercial breeder, and yes, I am routinely inspected by the American Kennel Club.
Very good. Thank you for being here. Allie Bell.
These 2 want to testify as well.
Miss Bell, state your name and who you represent.
Hi, I'm Allie Bell. I'm representing myself. I'm a breeder of merit with the AKC for Pomeranians and Japanese Chin, which the Chin is another rare breed. I'm a member of the American Pomeranian Club, my parent club, and I've been involved with the sport for over 15 years. I'm also a professional dog handler, so I get paid to care and condition dogs to go to dog shows. And I work for breeders from Texas. I travel thousands of miles and take their dogs to shows so that they can continue their breeding programs. So my livelihood depends on these breeders to be able to continue to make a living, mine and many others. So I wouldn't be out of a job. These are the breeders that are health testing their dogs. We're showing them in conformation to make sure they look like they're supposed to look. Purebred does not equal well-bred. The pet buying public deserves well-bred dogs. But in order to have a good breeding program, that might require having more than 5 intact females, but that doesn't mean that they're being bred all of the time.
Could be, though.
But the potential doesn't mean that they are.
Well, we're trying to
So,
cut out the abuse.
The issue is not the number of the females, but it's the fact that you have taken away the number of puppies being sold. Because if you only sell 5 puppies and they're all on a take-back spay-neuter contract, that's not contributing to the shelter population. So by reducing that requirement is where the biggest problem is. The reputable breeders that I work for, and myself included, don't want to raise our puppies in a kennel environment. We want to be able to freely choose how our puppies are raised. And many of us aren't going to choose to raise our dogs in a commercial style. That's not the quality of life that we want for our puppies and the pet buying public deserves.
How do we address the people that are not as conscientious and responsible as you are?
The number of puppies that are being sold
Mm-hmm.
would be the biggest, way to start. I mean, and you can't go and look at everybody's individual contract, but looking at how many litters that they're raising, are they showing their dogs? I mean, there's a huge
You
difference.
don't
in
think the female mama dogs are an indicator?
No. Because as she said, we don't raise our bitches we don't breed them every season. They might get bred every other season. I have 4.
But you're responsible and she's responsible, but we're trying to get to the folks that breed their 5 or more bitches every year.
But they would be producing those puppies. They would be selling those puppies. So they would be hitting that 20 puppies or more sold threshold.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody who, I might only have 1 surviving puppy. It might cost me $5,000 to get a litter of Pomeranians, and I might have 1 that lived. And I don't get $5,000 for a puppy. So we are not making a profit. I am not making a profit. By the time I have health tested and paid a stud fee and done everything I need to do.
Why do you do it?
I'm sorry?
Why do you do it if you don't make a profit?
To preserve the breed, to have puppies out there that look like they're supposed to look. When people come to me for a puppy, they want a well-bred dog that's going to be healthy.
Okay.
They don't want a dog that's going to die at 4 years old of a heart defect or, something like that. They want to know that they're getting a well-bred dog that was bred for a purpose and not just to be sold.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good job. Martin Grove? Martine Grove?
There you go, that's it.
I messed up your
It's
name.
Martine Gould,
I'm sorry, I'm reading your handwriting.
Yeah, it's not very good.
That's okay. State your name and who you represent.
Martine Gould, representing myself. I am a human genetics specialist. I'm a board-certified genetic counselor. I have a master's in human genetics. I showed and bred Briards up until about 2013. I stopped because this puppy mill bill passed in 2013, 2011. I stopped breeding at that time because I was not willing to have people come into my home or have a suggestion that I sterilize the end of my kids' beds every 24 hours because that's where my dogs were raised. So I stopped breeding because of that bill. Since this legislation has passed across the country, the registration of my breed, which are Briards, French sheepdogs, wonderful service dogs, wonderful herding dogs, fabulous dogs, the registration per year has dropped from 60 litters a year to 30 litters a year. We are incredibly protective of our breed as the Briards, and so they don't end up in puppy mills. But the problem is this legislation is killing breeds like ours. If you look at the AKC website, the number of purebred dogs has dropped substantially. The ability for someone to be able, in the state of Texas, to be able to buy an affordable puppy, they have gone up to $5,000 or more. That is what's going to the commercial breeders who are legislated by this legislation, whereas most of us have fallen out now of breeding. And I know many wonderful breeders who stopped because of this legislation, Chihuahua breeders. And yes, at that time I did have 11 intact dogs. They weren't all females. I do tend to co-own dogs that go other places. Now, my joke is everybody embraced their addiction during COVID, and so I did.
You had 11 female dogs.
I did at the time. I
How
do not
often would
now.
you breed them?
I've had now, because of COVID, I've had one
back
litter a
when
year.
the law went in effect and you got shut that off, and you had 11 female dogs, how often were you breeding 11 female dogs?
I would breed one female once a year at that time.
Out of 11, you just breed one?
Yes.
What'd you do?
Because, and that's the other thing I
What'd
brought.
you do the other 10? I bet they were bored.
I've brought testimony here. I've brought documentation of the study that was published in 2010 that female dogs that are spayed or neutered that are spayed prior to 6 years of age do not live as long as females that remain intact past the age of 6 years of age. And so this is AVMA. This is the initial study. This is AVMA.
No, I've heard it back in 2011. Okay.
Pardon?
I said, yes, I personally have heard familiar with that in 2011.
Yes, so I'm not sure why we would be promoting legislation, because I have 5 intact females now.
Oh, you do?
I can show you a picture if you'd like.
No.
They're beautiful.
I love
One
it.
is
I love
2
it.
or 4.5
Thank you.
pounds. They will not be spayed unless they have to be. They are 4.5 pounds. It is not healthy to put them through unnecessary surgeries. Neither of them will be bred. The other one is 5.5 pounds.
You've done
She
a
will-
great job. Okay, let me get to my other witnesses. But first, the state regulatory. State your name and who you represent.
Yes, sir. Steve Bruno, Texas
How many
Department of
times have you
Licensing
gone
and
into
Regulation.
somebody's house or their bedroom to see their operation?
Well, we have found with this program that there are many people who operate out of their home. We let them know ahead of time when we're going to be there to inspect, and we inspect only those areas that are part of the business.
You ever have to go into somebody's bedroom?
I have not heard from our inspectors. I've heard of our inspectors sitting at a living dining room table, for example, to inspect records. I'm not familiar with anyone going into a bedroom, but if there was part of the regulated business that was taking place there, then we would work with.
Be a good place to hide a bad operation, I assume.
That could be, yes, sir.
If you wanted to look at it as a negative. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Be careful. Michael Simpson? Don't let me forget that Armando's family. State your name and who you represent.
Michael Simpson, representing myself.
Yes, sir.
Excuse, I did not anticipate coming forward here, so I did not get the dress code.
No, don't worry. Yeah.
So my credentials are, my journey began as an adult leader to establish 4-H Dog Project Club in Williamson County.
Oh, what?
4-H Dog Project Club.
4-H Dog Project Club.
4-H dog. I thought that was
Williamson
breed of
County.
dog. I started saying, I hadn't heard that one. Go ahead.
One of the principles that I chose to instill on the students that were part of the 4-H program is the principles of responsible pet ownership.
Yes, sir.
That activity with those youth led to my interest in a new park features called off-leash dog parks. Serving on the Parks and Recs Advisory Board in Georgetown, I helped design and achieved the budget approval for the City of Georgetown's Bark Park, which was opened in October of 2008. I moved to the Animal Shelter Advisory Board and was the only non-city employee attending Mark Ringgold's seminar, No Kill Shelters. With my activity on that board and the staff, we changed staffing, the goals, and the mindset and achieved no kill status in the Georgetown City
Great.
Animal Shelter 2 years later and every year since for dogs.
Great. Now let's get to this legislation.
I'm getting to that because you brought up a really great question earlier, Senator, and that is, what can we do? I'm trying to lead to that.
Okay, I didn't know where you're going. It's just, the background is great, but we've got,
You understand. So what I did is we've also, since the 4-H and my kids are graduated, I've shifted to my efforts with the National Beagle Club of America and the rescue efforts. I'm a secretary for the rescue charity group, and at the end of February, just a few weeks ago, we issued checks to various breed rescues around the U.S. for $26,000 to help them defray
Wow.
costs.
great.
My experience in 20 years says that bottom line is part of the City of Georgetown Advisory. The phrase that I came up with, and I believe today, is it's time to educate, don't legislate. Problem that you asked, how do you take care of the separation of the responsible breeders versus the backyard breeders and those that are intentionally irresponsible? That's a really tough one. The only way to do that is to educate the consumers. And I know that that's a challenge because I've attempted to do that in my 20 years with folks that I've worked with, folks that I've been friends with, and I know people all over the United States as a result of my participation with the Beagle Club of America, and it's an uphill battle. But legislation won't solve it. It really won't. It never has. And this particular amendment, thank you for making it short and easy to understand. Love that. But the fact is it's built upon a bill that obviously did not succeed in its goals. 142. I'm going from memory here, but I think the number originally was 900. Maybe it was 800. 600. But it was 142 is a pretty big shortfall. It's 25%, not 100% of goal. The problem is this has the same problems that that foundation bill has. It does not have the enforcement capacity in this state when we've got much more serious crimes, which we heard about in your earlier bill discussions. Those are much more serious. If you want to engage in how do we institute the educate, not legislate, I would love to get together with you. Because in my career as an engineer, I love solving problems. And I have some
Very
pretty good
good.
ideas.
Great
but
concept.
Right now, I oppose this because it cannot succeed in your objective.
I appreciate it. Educate, not legislate. And put us out of business. That'd be good.
Yes.
I'd vote for that.
But then for more serious stuff.
Gets fixed guy, I can tell.
Thank you.
Sorry?
You're what gets measured gets fixed guy, right?
Thank you a lot. Thank you for your background.
Appreciate it.
You've made a big difference in the community. Stacy Kirby? Mr. Kirby, state your name, who you represent. Do you hear that,
Good morning,
gentleman?
Chair. Yes.
Educate, don't legislate.
My name is Stacy Sutton Kirby, Director of Government Relations at the Texas Humane Legislation Network. We are a 45-year-old nonprofit that studies policy that's good for Texas animals, by Texans, for Texans. We're not affiliated with the national group, and we have studied this issue for a long time. Thank you, Senator, for the original passage of House Bill 1451. As we all know, when TDLR had a mandate to implement the dog and cat breeders licensing program after the passage of that bill, it bumped along doing its thing, licensing breeders, and they would get inspected. We did hear some testimony earlier about how some of the people that didn't want to be licensed dumped their dogs at shelters, but the program went along until it came up for its sunset review, and that's where the crux of this bill comes from. The Sunset Report identified the structural problems in the statute that are preventing the wide swath of Texas breeders that aren't being inspected. If you're a hobby breeder, you're exempt. I would like to reassure all the ethical people that are doing everything they can to preserve a quality bloodline and that pamper their animals and take them to shows. You will not be affected by this, and thank goodness you're taking
Okay,
such
let's go
great
down,
care.
because they disagree with you, and we're not going to probably resolve it this morning.
I'm sorry, Chair. I can't.
You're saying that hobby breeders are not covered. They're all disagreeing with you. So tell specifically why they're not regulated.
Why hobby breeders are not regulated?
Yeah, because they say they are.
Well, because we are delineating that right now, de facto, if you have 10 or fewer, you're a hobby because you're not required to be recognized as a commercial licensed breeder. So if we're dropping that threshold down to 5, and Sunset identified why we should be doing that, then you're going to remain a hobby breeder. Also, all the exemptions that are currently in statute make you fall under that broad umbrella. If you're breeding dogs for a task, hunting, agriculture, all of the different types of competitions, even dogs for racing,
fall under that category. So if you're that hobby breeder, you're breeding for a task, you're breeding for competing in organized events, you're covered and you can continue with your operation. It's really this delta between the 5 and the 10 breeding females where there's no sunlight on what they're doing. And I would like to just for a moment touch on when you did ask the gentleman from TDLR, thank you so much for being a resource witness, how many breeders would be brought into the program. I heard him quote 50, and I think maybe that's the cross-referencing. We do know there are USDA licensed breeders operating here in Texas that don't have a TDLR license because they don't have the 11 breeding females. But they definitely have a commercial breeding operation that would fall under the purview of the program if the threshold was lowered. The Sunset Report identified 400 that they thought would come into the program if the threshold was corrected. I want you to think about how many puppies 5 females can make in a year. If you've got each female, she makes her 5 puppies. There you have your 25, 30. If you breed them twice a year, which they typically do, we're talking 60, 65, 70 animals without any basic standards of care, without any requirement to make sure that there are vaccination records and that there is a socialization and veterinary care program. That's what TDLR puts in place. And I would like to share with y'all, TDLR has done its own study of the licensees for over a 3-year period. They reviewed the 466 complaints that came in. Only 20 of those were against licensees in the TDLR program because the program prevents, it educates, and it helps breeders get in line. TDLR is not in the business of kicking people out of their profession.
Very good. Thank you, Stacey. Adam Reynolds?
Oh, thank you. Well, I just wanted to end with, we'd be happy to work.
Yeah,
with,
we're
other
gonna
folks.
leave it and allow everybody to come together, okay? So everybody get ready to go to work. Jennifer Delbar. Another car. Adam, I'm sorry, go ahead, state your name. You wanna get ready next? And then 2 minutes, because the bill's gonna be left pending.
Yes, sir.
To allow the parties to visit at the request of the author. Keep hope alive. Go ahead, state your name, who you represent.
Good morning. My name is Adam Reynolds. I'm the Chief Cruelty Investigator for the Houston SPCA, the Gulf Coast's largest and oldest animal protection organization. I'm certified as an expert investigator through the Law Enforcement Training Academy at the University of Missouri's National Academy of Cruelty Investigations, and I was previously a Marine for 21 years. The Houston SPCA alone responds to 8,000 reports of animal cruelty each year. And of those many forms of cruelty that we respond to, high-volume breeding is often the most heart-wrenching. I'm here today on behalf of the Houston SPCA, which serves over 55,000 animals and their families each year. As a cruelty investigator with several years in the field, we see the Texas Licensed Breeder Program as an absolute necessity in preventing costly seizures of compromised animals, protecting consumers, and preventing cruelty. The program is effective in preventing cruelty and disease for those who are covered. That said, as Senate Bill 876 recognizes, far too many commercial breeders are not held to TDLR standards. With the passage of House Bill 1451 in 2011, which generated the Texas Licensed Breeder Program, the largest of operations came under TDLR's purview, but the largest number of Texas commercial breeding operations are still not covered. An example of this was found in a case in 2020 in which one of my investigators responded to a report of a large number of animals kept in a small home with a strong odor of urine and feces. The owners explained that they were breeding both English Bulldogs and Yorkshire Terriers and were not licensed.
Okay, can you wind it up?
Yes, sir. We found dozens of emaciated dogs and puppies, infected wounds from dock tails, external and internal parasites, urine scalding, caked and dried feces in their coats, dental disease, ear and eye infections were noted in the majority of all animals. This is just one example of the cases my investigators face. Until the loophole of this current law is closed, current seizures like this will continue. Reputable breeders who have provided appropriate nutrition, vet care, socialization of the animals in their facilities are not the issue. Unfortunately, it's the unethical breeders that we see, the commercial breeders that cut corners on animal nutrition, vaccinations, and socialization. Responsible breeders should want this. They already want to meet surpass the minimum standards of care under the TLR licensing. And from our standpoint, working with TLR gives the breeder an opportunity to address issues before conditions require law enforcement to expend resources and prosecute a criminal case. Nobody wants it to come to this. SB 876 would prevent those
Very
cases from
good.
happening.
And thank you for what you do back home.
Thanks, sir. I'm happy to answer
Jennifer
any questions.
Delmar?
Yes, sir. Jennifer Delmer, individually, and for the Greater Houston Pembroke Welsh Corgi Fanciers. I've been teaching public school for 25 years, the past 8 at the Young Women's Leadership Academy in San Antonio ISD. Outside of school, my passion is dogs, and my seniors will tell you they are taught Pembroke 101 and responsible dog ownership in addition to government and economics. Their government's opening activity yesterday focused on the Texas legislature and why I must attend in person to testify to this Senate committee. I've owned dogs my entire life, but for the past 17 years have become more involved with AKC-registered Pembroke Welsh Corgis, both in conformation showing and in performance events. As I look towards retirement, my interest in breeding Pembrokes grows, and this bill would expose my entire house, including my bedroom where my dogs live, to being inspected by a complete stranger. I know personally many hobby breeders in similar situations who own more than 5 intact bitches who could not attend this hearing because on short notice they are not able to leave their dogs. As a hobby breeder, my interest began with my Pembroke Rosie, whose success has been in performance, not conformation, but this canine companion was still not spayed until she was 2.5 years old due to research against early spaying. My next Pembroke Ruby took me on a wonderful journey to an AKC championship, which led to the opportunity to be mentored and co-breed a litter with a 25-year AKC breeder of merit. Even though Ruby's a champion, many health and genetic tests were conducted, not by government mandate, but by the ethics of the Greater Houston Pembroke Welsh Corgi Fanciers and the Pembroke Welsh Corgi Club of America. By breeding these dogs, I, along with my co-breeder, have agreed to be responsible for them for the entirety of their lives. For any reason, at any time, the dogs may be returned to us. As an individual hobby breeder and representing the Greater Houston Pembroke Welsh Corgi Fanciers, I'm shocked at the audacity of this proposed government intrusion into our personal lives and urgently request you withdraw this bill. Thank you, Senator Whitmer and committee, for your time. I invite you and your families to come to the River City Cluster of Dog Shows, July 13th through 16th in San Antonio, or the largest show in Texas, the Houston World Series of Dog Shows at NRG Center, July 19th through 23rd.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Anyone else wants to testify? If not, we're going to let the cards of witnesses be read into the record. At the request of the author, we're going to leave it pending to allow the parties to get together and talk. So Senate Bill 876 is left pending. A couple of administrative things. Members, can I, Senator Flores moves that Senate Bill 386 by Senator Hall be referred to local and consent. Is there objection? Chair is none, so granted. Same for committee substitute for Senate Bill 806 by Senator Paxson. Senator Flores moves it be certified for local and consent. Is there objection? Chair is none.
Yeah, he does.
Also, Senate Bill 1717. Senator Flores moves it be certified for local and consent. Is there objection? Chair is none.
King wants to do his pending real quick.
Senator King, you want to roll out, but we're coming back this afternoon. Can we do it?
I can do it right now, or I'm just next door in B and C for the rest of the day.
Well, what I was fixing to tell you, but we've got the Swarton and Sunset Bill that we've got together, probably 30 minutes after adjournment. So we'll do yours, and then we'll get Senator Springer or someone can move his pending business. I was hoping we'd get through this morning, but Swartner's got important Sunset, and I've got the parochial school security force bill. So we'll try to get together about 30 minutes on adjournment. Okay? All right. We stand recessed.